Can you help us understand what exactly is Kubernetes and what are the other alternatives available other than Kubernetes?
Yeah. So again, this is a big topic in itself. So this again has is not related purely to cloud in itself, right? Kubernetes is a platform where customers run Kubernetes in their own data centers and everywhere, right? So it's more about an abstraction layer, right? So one of the major concerns which a lot of enterprise organizations have is with using PaaS services, especially PaaS services in AWS or Azure, is the stickiness of cloud, right? So that means today, let's say I chose Azure as a platform and I started integrating my code, my applications and everything with Azure, right, as a PaaS service. Tomorrow, let's say I don't like Azure. Coming out of Azure, when I tightly integrate with cloud native services, is very difficult. I have to do a lot of recoding in my application to get out of Azure, right? So that's why cloud service providers love PaaS, right? They want you to be tightly integrated so that you don't go away easily, right? So that's where vendor agnostic solutions like Kubernetes comes in, right? So what is Kubernetes? If you have heard about this whole concept of containers, right? So maybe back in 2014, 15, right, people started leveraging containers as a platform, right? So if you're aware of virtualization, people used to run on one server in olden days, maybe 20, 30 years back. If I want to run one application, I'll buy one hardware, one server, and I'll run one application on one server, right? So that's it, right? One application per server. Then came the era of virtualization, driven by VMware, where you will have on one hardware, you will create something called as virtual machines. So you can run multiple VMs on the same hardware, right? So containers is taking it to the next level. So it's on one operating system itself, right? You're running multiple small containers. So containers are lightweight encapsulated code, right? So a container, you have seen shipping containers, right? A shipping container has everything inside. You just take it. It's very modular, right? You can easily transport it around, right? So you'll have on a ship, put it on a ship, take it on a truck or a lorry, and then ship it somewhere again, put it on a cargo aeroplane. A container is, in normal logistics, a container is very easy to ship around. So same concept applies in today's world. So you have a container which has everything inside it. It's independent. It can run. You have the dependencies, you have the application code, you have the web servers or the database, everything inside a container. You can take the container, you can run it anywhere where you want. Today you're coding in your laptop. Okay, fine. You finish your development. You have the container. You take that container, put it on the cloud. It will run without any issues, right? So when people started doing this, this whole concept of microservices.
Add, right? There's little. I think some heavy terms used here. Recruiters may not get it. Just to help them get a little more clarity in terms of containers, right? It's like this. For example, if you have to run one application or a software, you set up a lot of dependencies and environment, right, in one operating system, right? This is the most basic way that how things have been working for the last 20 years, 30 years. Now, for example, you have to make this particular code which you've already set up in your laptop to work elsewhere. Maybe you want to make sure this code runs in someone else's laptop, right? Then you have to set up all that dependencies and environment in someone else's laptops, right? So what containers brought in a model wherein you can just put it in a container, and that container will have all the dependencies, everything which is required, the environment, everything. And you take that container, maybe you just throw it in cloud, they can use it directly from there. They need not install the dependencies and stuff. This is what container is. I think just wanted to add this. Maybe this was
definitely, absolutely, right. So it's as I mentioned, it's just, I just took the example of a shipping container. It's very modular, self-contained. You just take it, very easily push it around anywhere wherever you want, right? It will run without any issues, right? The issue started coming in when customers started running thousands of containers, right? So if you're running one container, it's fine, it's easy to manage, and right, it's fine. But when you're running thousands of containers, right, just like in a shipping industry, in logistics industry, you need somebody to process it, manage it, operate it, right? Similarly, in technical terms, you needed some orchestration platform, right? If you are running 1,000 containers, how to make sure that if one container stops working for some reason, if I'm running 1,000 containers, it's very difficult for me to identify which container stopped working, restart that container, troubleshoot that container and things like that, right? How do I scale it, right? So I have containers running in, right? Suddenly I launched a my marketing team launched a marketing campaign. I need to scale out automatically, right? So I need some kind of an orchestration platform, right, which helps you to simplify running and operating and managing these kind of containers. That's what I know Kubernetes is, right? Kubernetes was internally used by Google, right? They were using it internally. Then they launched it as an open source product, right? So maybe back 3-4 years back, there was what we call as the orchestrator wars happening, right? So there were competing orchestrators. You had Kubernetes, you have Docker Swarm, you have a couple of them. I don't remember these, right? You had competing, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, Mesosphere. Yeah, Mesosphere was there. DCOS was there. Lot of competing, orchestrator platforms were there. But Kubernetes emerged as the winner, right? Nobody talks about the other platforms these days, right? Kubernetes is the single, most used container orchestrator platform, right? So where does cloud come in over here, right? Kubernetes you can run on premise, right? Kubernetes is an open source product. You can run it in your own environments. You can run it in your laptop as a lightweight dev environment. You can run it in your own data center, right? But Kubernetes is not easy, right? Configuring, managing, operating Kubernetes is not easy. It's complex, right? So again, a lot of infrastructure folks also are learning Kubernetes these days about operating and managing Kubernetes. That's the infrastructure part. They don't get into the coding part, right? So infrastructure profiles also are getting into operating, managing, configuring Kubernetes clusters. This is an infrastructure, especially Linux admins, right? People from a Linux backgrounds, they are moving into Kubernetes administrators of running and operating and managing Kubernetes clusters. But still, it's complex. You'll have a lot of networking, software-defined networking, managing complex storage and compute. A lot of requirements are there. So a lot of these Linux admins are moving towards getting certified as Kubernetes administrators. But still, managing Kubernetes is complex. That's why you have cloud providers like Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, providing Kubernetes as a managed service, as a service, basically, right? When you talk about infrastructure service, platform as a service, software as a service, you can literally substitute anything. We call it as XaaS, anything as a service, right? So similarly, we have Kubernetes as a service, where these service providers, they take care of the complexity. Okay, fine. Running Kubernetes clusters is difficult. We'll take care of that backend complexity. We will give you a simplified front end so that your developers itself, you don't need a lot of operations guys, right, infra guys to set it up, manage it, configure it. Let the cloud provider take care of it. The developers it becomes easy, right? So you have a Kubernetes cluster running on cloud. You have a Kubernetes cluster running in your data center. It's very easy. You have the same containers, you throw it over there, you bring it back over here. So what happens is there's no more stickiness. You are running on AWS today. You don't like AWS. You take all your containers and move it into Azure. You don't like Azure tomorrow. Take everything, come back to your on-premise data center, right? So there's no more stickiness when you leverage things like Kubernetes because it's a vendor-agnostic platform, right? So in Kubernetes as well, you will have different roles. As I mentioned, you'll have an infrastructure guys who know to operate, monitor, and manage Kubernetes, right? That's an infra profile. And then you'll have a developer profile. So generally leveraging DevOps and things like that, designing microservices applications and going and coding those applications in those terms and deploying it into a Kubernetes platform. That's where the developers come in. We'll have a Kubernetes developers as well, or developers who know Kubernetes to go out and manage and deploy it in a Kubernetes platform.